Hey folks, Green Stuff Gav here. This week we've got something a little bit different in that we're going to be unboxing and assembling the Ven Denst, the two new Witch Hunter characters for Age of Sigmar. So I've ordered this from the Entoyment down in Poole and thought it'd be quite a nice little thing to give it a assemble and see what we can do with them. Like many others, I wanted to look at getting some witch hunters together using the Cursed City heroes, bulked out by these guys, but obviously Cursed City no longer exists, so this is where we're going to have to go. So let's have a look here. In fact, let's have a quick look at the box. So they have got alternate options. I'd only seen the promo image from Games Workshop, so it's quite nice. You've got an alternate pistol to the torch, the pistol or sword, and the young lady's got an alternate head with a nice little hood hat by the look of it. So let's have a look, see what we've got. So, single sprue rulebook with assembly instructions. They look quite straightforward. Single piece with arms for the chap. Girl, 2 parts, head. Nothing too strenuous. The rules, which should be on Games Workshop's website to download, but Cities of Sigmar heroes, so 5+ to ignore wounds. Oh, and 2 separate war scrolls. Anyway, not too worried about that. This is the bit we're interested in. Let's see, a bit more light. Is that too much light? That might be too much light. Anyway, quite straightforward by looks of it. 2 parts. I missed page 1. Yeah, easy enough. So I think the way that I normally approach a conversion is you either know what you want to do, or you have an idea of the plan. Something on the fly like this, I don't think they want a lot of conversion. They're quite nice models as is. I think we're going to go for sword and maybe change that to be a pointing finger instead of a sword, because obviously when it comes with torch or pistols. So I think we're going to go for pistol and sword. Don't think there's really a lot wants converting, other than if you've got the sword in his hand, his backpack shouldn't have the hilt unless he's got 2 swords. I might look at her hat going on him as well, but otherwise fairly straightforward for this guy. So, a pair of clippers, got our knife, got our glue from the unboxing, and let's have a look. So piece 1 and 2. In fact, I'll do this with the instruction manual. Don't normally worry, but I'm going to carefully clip from the sprue. Obviously there's various ways of doing this. Some people will cut extra back and then cut back, but I've never been that concerned. As long as you get nice and close, then we can clip things back, trim things up with a knife as we need. But so we'll put that down. Let's have a quick look. Not a lot of mould lines, just need to tidy up where we've clipped off the sprues. Again, you could do this with a file, but I tend to find a nice sharp knife is much easier. It's got a bit of a lean to him, which is unusual. So yeah, just a little tidy up. bit more light. Got daylight bulb, which is adjustable, but don't want to overexpose the light, but you want to have good light to help your vision. There's nothing worse than trying to squint in the darkness. So again, we're just going to trim up these contact points. Thankfully they're on quite a flat armor plate, so there's a bit of mould line on this side though, so we are going to just carefully clean it back. So you've got the metal scrapers, they can do it, or you can use a series of files. But the problem with files, if you don't have the right grit, it will leave a texture that doesn't stand out with the rest of the miniature. And you've got to make sure the tiny little studs there, so don't want to trim those back. Right, easy. Then we dry fit before we put any glue on, just to see where things sit. Lovely, lovely miniature. I'm glad this one's on the regular release. You could see many different conversions, whether it's 40k rogue traders or Inquisitor characters. There's quite a few options with this one, as well as the witch hunter he's designed to be. So we've got our really watery colour forged super glue from the unboxing. And with gluing, less is more. You don't want to put too much glue on because it will take forever to set, as well as you risk it going everywhere and making a mess. Now that I'm looking, I've got a slight mould line there, but otherwise it's looking quite good. So, according to the instructions, the head is part number 3, which is the only male head on there. Certainly looks like the his daughter has got different heads, whether you give her the hat or not. So we're going to carefully cut his backpack out. Start with gluing the head on because that's an easy part. We're going to do some work on the backpack, as we mentioned. We're going to just trim the backpack down to remove the sword. Actually, we'll check his war scroll, see if he should have 2 swords or not. I don't think he should. So for his hair, we'll just clean up this mould line because that will be obvious when we come to paint. Not that we'll be painting in this episode. I need to do what they refer to as a pile of shame, because my pile of opportunity is not, I've not got that much floating around to paint. His head's going to sit on there nice. Now I'm going to put a dab of blue on his neck joint connection. You could theoretically go in and add it to the torso, but with such a small gap you don't want it going everywhere. Slide the head in there. Now it's had a dab of glue. It's sunken a little bit, but looks quite cool. Now the backpack. Let's have a quick look at his rules. A pistol and broadsword, so he shouldn't have 2. So if we're going to give him a sword in his point in hand, we need to remove this hilt and handle from the sheathed sword, because then this can just be a scabbard. But first we're going to just tidy up the clipping points, sprue points, because it's easier to do it before we start cutting so we don't miss anything. Tidy up nice. And there's bedroll on the top as well. So easy as that, nice and straightforward. Not many clip points on this, so there's not a lot to clean up, which is good. Again, this casting GW's doing these days is fantastic. So I have got, as we're going to be doing some precision cutting, I've got a very sharp scalpel, and all we're going to do is we're going to cut right where the handle comes into the sheath there, and then we're going to cut down here to tidy this so that we don't lose any of this sleeping bag. So I'm going to cut that first, nice sharp knife all the way down. Gone a little bit far out there, but easy to just trim this part. So you can see we've still got a touch of the sword here, so we're going to come in behind it and carefully slice it down. Now I've cut that too far, but we'll do a touch more cutting work and we should be able to clean that up. So we're just going to carefully trim away until the plastic's nice and smooth, because obviously you don't want any sticking up untextured bits to make it stand out. A good part of any conversion is making it so that it doesn't look like a conversion, like the model's supposed to be that way. I'm sure if there was room on the sprue, he would have an alternate backpack, or this part would be separate. But they have packed quite a lot in on the sprues, quite a lot of fine, intricate detail. So just tidying that up, smoothing that off, so it looks like the sleeping bag hasn't had a bit of sword stuck on it. So I don't know if you can see that, but that worked quite well. Let's trim it down a touch. It's all about carefully cutting, carefully trimming till it looks right. Because if you see just the smallest part that doesn't look right, bare plastic, by the time you undercoat, it'll stand out tenfold. So we're just trimming that away. That's looking a lot better. Tiny bit of flash, clean while we're here. Now that we're looking up close, that should help. So I'm just going to trim it a touch back more to give a bit more definition to this scabbard. Because you do risk, if you cut it too fine, you won't actually see the difference in the detail, and you'll have to paint it on. That's a bit better. So, as per the instructions, we're going to glue this on his back. I like that his back's textured enough that you don't really need to put his backpack on, but it does help with the weighed down with gear look to the model. Just adds a bit more interest. Now you can see how much difference that makes to a silhouette. That should look quite Good. So we want his pointing sword arm. Let's see what the instructions say. Pointing sword arm, 8 and 9. There's 9. Carefully take this off the sprue. 8 is his pistol hand. It's tempted to give him the torch, but I do prefer the look of the pistol. So again, we're going clean up the contact points, because things like you see on the barrel here, there's a little nub there, and that will stand out like a sore thumb when we come to paint. So we're just going to carefully trim it back. And then clean the contact point. Check for any flash. Again, quite good casts. That will sit on there nicely. And just a dab of glue. You could use I probably should use poly cement, but I don't actually have any at the moment, and I don't do a lot with new plastic, so most of my work is all done on second-hand stuff, which has already got a layer of paint on. So poly cement wouldn't work quite as well. But again, we'll just clean this sword up, because this will be a focal point on the miniature, so we want to make sure this is proper clean and smooth. We've got a small bit of flash on the glove itself, and obviously a contact point with the sprue wants cleaning, because if any of these aren't clean, then they'll adjust the pose of the miniature when it's glued together. So we've got a small bit of flash on the pommel. Strange how some parts have got a bit of flash and some don't. You'd think it was all the same because the sprue's been cast as a single piece, but very good. So that will sit on there nice. Bit of contact. There we are. Now I haven't decided on basing yet. Doesn't sit very flush on the... Oh, there you go. So he sits and his toes are slightly lifted. I don't know if you can see that. But what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to base this guy to match my Empire army, which is a cracked earth solution. So they can both be glued just straight to the bases, and we will tidy up. All the basing will be done in the painting stage, so I'm going to just pop him onto a base. It's not quite centrally, but he has got quite a large overhang, so we will leave him there. So the daughter, Dorelia. So most of hers will be straightforward. This crossbow arm, I want to look at reposing, but thankfully that's quite far into the build, so we can go ahead and assemble her normally. So 2 halves of the body. And tidy up all the contact points. Give us some nice smooth details. Not forgetting the top of the collar. Again, this is where the head will be, so that'll be a focus point, so you want to make sure that's cleaned up well. Cleaning up the feet so that she glues onto the base nice and sturdy, because there's nothing worse than having a model falling off its base. Let's clean up here. We've got a small bit of sprue, so we're just going to tuck with the knife, clean that up, keep that nice and smooth. Same on her hip here. Slight bit of mold lines. Again, things like armor plates will show up mold lines because you're going to be doing flat metallics, and they'll show up mold lines terribly. So now when we glue this, we're going to have a small gap there, so we're going to run a file over this just to smooth it off, especially along the edge of cloaks, because that's not where they naturally have seams. So just touch of glue. Okay, this colour forged stuff's very watery, so I'm going to put a bit of pressure on, glue it together. Then find a needle file. Now I like the rounded needle files because A, they're quite small, so you can get them in small gaps, and the rounded edge helps to tidy up to make it look a lot less than just a straight flat edging. So all we're going to do, especially while the glue's wet still or tacky, is we're just going to run across the edging, because then the filings, a lot of the filings themselves will go into the gap where the glue is and help bulk that up. So very similar to using your liquid green stuff or any modelling putty, but using the glue itself while it's drying. Don't really need any across the top, but we do need some here. And we're just going back and forth, turning it slightly to give us nice flow to the robes. So I'm just not gonna worry too much about this inner seam, because that won't really be visible by the time everything's assembled. We're just gonna give it a quick nudge, because again some of the filings will get into the gaps there, and that will help fill the gap. And back on the thing, I've got an old brush just to brush the excess away. You don't want any excess plastic filings on there when you come to undercoat, because they'll just give a nasty texture. So, while this gap has been filled quite well, we'll just give it another little once over, just to really make sure we've got smooth join. because again, this is the sort of thing that you'll really know, your eye will really be drawn to if it's not tidied up properly. Just spending a couple of minutes tidying up will aid your miniature look much better. Really big payoff. So that's that. What have we got next? So our head next, we can either do hat, which is 2 pieces, or the straight head. Now I'm not a big fan of the hat because I think that's very suitable for a leader, so we might try putting the hat on Galen, but after we've done this. Or it can go in the bits box and go onto another miniature. Or there are plenty of miniatures companies out there that might even buy bits off you. Things like Monster Wargaming bits is always worth a query. So not a lot of flash there. It looks like flash, but however that's just where her hairstyle comes. Got to separate from the ear. That's not as snug a fit as her dad's gets, but just a touch of glue. Again, the smallest little piece because you've got a very small connection point. Very cool. Alright, 13 and 14 are her equipment packs. So 13 and 14. Thankfully, where she's got her sword in its scabbard, we're not going to have to worry about cutting any of these bits down. But as with the rest, we make sure we clean up. Because you don't want any of them connection points to show through when you come to paint. See, I'm effectively running a knife along the entire edge. Just keep it nice and clean and blend it in. A little bit of flash on there. And the connection point to the sprue. Not a lot of cleanup required there. So we do this one first, which she's got a couple of nubs that will sit on there. So just give it a tiny bit of glue. That's gone on nicely. While that dries, we'll clean up the next piece. A lot of modelling is about being efficient with your timings. Now, we've got a tiny little sprue mark here on the hilt, on the crossguard. So I'm going to use my sharp knife and very carefully cut that away, because otherwise you risk snapping this piece, which would be disastrous. That would be a nightmare to fix. So we're going to carefully clean this with this very fine scalpel. Now we've got a tiny bit of flash still, so as we said earlier, it's all about being careful, taking your time. Don't be afraid to cut off in small sections and work back over, because otherwise you risk snapping something or cutting away too much. And when you're talking 20 odd quid for the pair of them, don't really want to mess things up, unless you are planning on converting them into something else, maybe a Mordheim crew. again, not a lot of cleanup required there. But we do need to be careful with this handle and pommel. That's far too much glue. Like I say, very wet. This colour forge stuff, so try that again. So yeah, it's a fantastic model, really nice model that is. Okay, so according to the instructions, all we're going to do is glue on this crossbow. Or not, we're going to glue crossbow together and glue that on. What I am going to do, however, is assemble the crossbow and then see if we're going to repose it. Again, very fine pieces here, so we're going to just use a sharp scalpel to clean up. Again, just carefully, because it's very easy to come down and just take some of this detail off. It's a very thick crossbow. Now, what I'm trying to decide is if I'm going to have her holding it two-handed or perhaps even resting it up. So that, let's put this down for her. So at the moment, she obviously holds it two-handed. So that's a terrible fit. Now we look at it. That's a terrible fit. So that's where she holds it anyway, but I was thinking perhaps reposing it to be holding it upright, but now I look at it, I don't think that's going to work. Not without rebuilding all this arm, and especially this arm here where she's got it quite an angle. You can see her wrist is very she's holding her wrist at quite an angle. So what I would do is I would cut it, the hand off at the wrist, straighten it up, and then she'd be holding it upright. But I think we are going to stick with standard assembly on this one. You never know, as it's not a limited edition model, if you guys wanted me to do a bit of conversion work and rework a pair of these models, because there's a couple of options there, certainly let us know, and we can, thankfully, like I say, they're not a limited edition model, so we can always order another one. So, that's not a great fit. There it is. Yeah, not a big fan of that crossbow. So what we're going to do here is we're going to apply the glue to the wrist and the joint. We're going to line up the wrist first, because that's the smallest point, and that will give us room to manoeuvre the part in. Bit of pressure with the glue. Yeah, it's cool, but I think she could be in a cooler pose. It's very utilitarian, very business-like, which is exactly what you want in a witch hunter. I put too much glue on the foot there, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to line the feet up, put it on the base first, and that'll transfer some of the glue off and give us glue to place the other one on. And there we are. The two Ven Denst. Very cool models. I really like them. They're some really nice intricate details, nice flowing capes, and as I said, could be used in a variety of different systems for different uses. So let's move some stuff out of the way, put that back safe. I'm not going to go into the rules because plenty of people have done the crunch. Where are them stakes from? I missed a piece. I don't see where them stakes are from. There's 4, so I've got him. Yeah, I did, right off the front. I like him without, actually, now I look at him. So he should have a little stake and a dagger on his belt there, but I quite like it without. I think that'd be too much. Let's put the hood, and I think the hat will fit on him as well. So let us know, folks, if you want to see me convert up a couple more. But those are going to join my Empire bit. Again, sprue goes into the bits box. Keep the rulebook, because if anyone plays Age of Sigmar, which I don't know if anyone does, certainly not at the moment with all the lockdown, but that can go in the box with the Empire. So, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have fun.